and the defense hasn't been there for the Blackhawks. Also, Jimmy Howard, goaltender for the Red Wings, he's been standing on his head. He's actually he's had one of his renaissance periods during the playoffs. Um, Unfortunately for him, he's allowed the Blackhawks 8 goals within the last 2 games after only allowing 2 goals in the 3 prior to that. So things look good for the Blackhawks for now. But Game 7 is on the horizon. It's going to be in Chicago. Everything should be excited. And hopefully the Blackhawks can come out of this game alive. If they can do that, then everything should be fantastic. Um, Not only are the Blackhawks playing, but you have a very interesting Eastern Conference Finals in the NBA. You have the Miami Heat, defending champs, going up against the Indiana Pacers, who many assume were going to be tough for the Heat to defeat, but at the same time, a lot of experts have predicted that the Heat would win in 5 and 6. And obviously, they don't see the same things that I see, because I feel as though that if the Pacers, especially if they tie the series up later on tonight, that the Pacers have what it takes to knock off the Heat, who aren't as good as what everyone says they are. That's just my opinion. I know a lot of people will be a little upset by that. They might actually question my Bulls knowledge. But at the same time, that's the reason why I have an opinion. We all have an opinion. And in my opinion, I think that the Pacers have what it takes. But they have to eliminate foolish turnovers. They cannot let LeBron James play in the post against Paul George the way that he did in Game 3 and allow him to get away with that. What they're going to have to do is probably shade a defender on a side, bring over some length, perhaps play Tyler Hansbrough a little bit, Ian Mahinmi a little bit, backup center for the Pacers, to force LeBron to pass the ball. Now, granted, me personally, I feel as though the best way to defeat the Heat is to force LeBron to beat you. Now, I know a lot of people will scratch their head with the notion of that because they feel as though, and it's true, LeBron James is the best player in the NBA. At the same time, LeBron James cannot beat the Indiana Pacers by himself. What he must do is get his teammates involved. So you have to go back to the bad boy Pistons and how they would defend Michael Jordan back in the late 80s, early 90s. They had their Jordan rules. That meant everybody but Michael Jordan would actually get a shot off. And they would defend everyone but Michael Jordan. Now, granted, they would defend Jordan one-on-one, but they would force Jordan to beat them by having Jordan score 40, 50 points a game. And for 2 seasons, they were effective. With LeBron James and the Miami Heat, the whole plan is to have him defeat you. Now, is he capable of doing that? Absolutely. But what makes the Miami Heat dangerous is the fact that Dwayne Wade is, when healthy, he's one of the top 5, top 6, 7 best basketball players in the world. Chris Bosh is top 25, easily. And you have shooters that surround them, guys who can get open and actually take and make 3-point shots. That's what makes them dangerous. But if you shut them down and if you cut off LeBron James's passing lanes, the Miami Heat isn't that effective. Now, what's going to have to happen for the Pacers to even the series up, they have to go back to square one. They have to force LeBron to give it up. If he's going to back up Paul George in the post, they're going to have to find a way to force LeBron James to give up the basketball and funnel it to a shooter and hope and pray that the defensive switches are fast enough to close in on the shooter and force the shooters into making bad shots. This is something that if the Bulls were healthy, the Bulls have shown when healthy that they've been able to do, and several other teams have been able to do as well. Now, what awaits the Miami Heat or the Pacers once the Eastern Conference Finals is wrapped up, and it looks like, I'm going to be honest, it looks like the Heat should win probably in 6, maybe in 7, although I don't expect the Pacers to lay down and die, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Pacers pull off a stunning upset and defeat the Heat if they can take Game 4 and take Game 5. They can pull off the upset. But what awaits them is a San Antonio Spurs team that just now hitting their stride. San Antonio effectively eliminated a hot Memphis Grizzlies team. And what they've proven to myself, as well as others, that age is only a number. Experience is very, very important. That experience is hard to defeat. The Spurs have been there. They've done that. The Spurs team has never lost in the NBA Finals. And pretty much the 3 core players from the finals teams that won 4 championships, they're still there. Tony Parker's playing as best as he's ever played in his entire career. Manu Ginobili is still a threat. Tim Duncan is playing like a 27-year-old man, not a 37-year-old man. So no matter who they face in the finals, if it's the Heat, bring some interesting storylines. If it's the Pacers, it's a nice clash. I know that casual fans may explode with the idea of the Indiana Pacers facing the San Antonio Spurs, but maybe it's time for certain media markets to rise above some of the things that are inaccurate in regards to reporting, in regards to how much hype that their teams deserve. And what I mean when I say that, what I mean by that is there's some good basketball going on in San Antonio. Unfortunately, we see so much Miami Heat, so much Los Angeles Lakers, so much New York Knicks that we're kind of clueless to what goes on there. Same thing goes for the Indiana Pacers. There's good basketball being played in Indianapolis. Unfortunately, Indianapolis isn't on TNT very often. Indianapolis isn't on ESPN very often. But now, slowly but surely, as casual fans start to recognize that these teams are actually pretty damn good, maybe, just maybe, it'll open up everyone's minds and realize that there's more things going on in the league than the Lakers, the Knicks, the Heat, the Clippers, dare I say, the Bulls. But a Miami Heat, San Antonio Spurs contest would be interesting. I don't know if many of you recall, but early on in the season, when the Spurs were supposed to play the Heat in Miami, the Spurs sent several of their players home. Those players included Tim Duncan, Ginobili, Tony Parker, Kawhi Leonard didn't play, and at the time, Stephen Jackson, if I'm not mistaken, who was waived right before the season ended. Stephen Jackson didn't play either. The Miami Heat had trouble beating San Antonio's C squad. And what did the Miami Heat do for their revenge? They followed up in their rematch by sitting LeBron James and Dwayne Wade. And they thrashed the Spurs. At the same time, those same San Antonio Spurs that they defeated were going through the motions. Now they're finally hitting their stride, and it's going to make for a very interesting NBA Finals, provided that's going to be the NBA Finals. In case you missed it, in case you're living under a rock, especially if you live in the Chicagoland area, the Chicago Cubs and the Chicago White Sox are doing battle. The Chicago Cubs defeated the Sox. First time they've had a shutout, complete game shutout by Jefferson Marja. 7-0, the Cubs were winners over the White Sox. First time in the Crosstown Classic history, in a game that many people were surprised that the weather allowed to finish, because with the storms going on in the Chicago area, many people felt as though there was going to be a rain delay or a rain out. Thankfully, the two teams were able to complete the game. Unfortunately, nobody told the White Sox that the game had began. And it looked as though when everything was bleak and bad for the Sox, it just got worse and worse and worse. That being said, the Cubs look like a better team than what many people felt. Unfortunately, they have to get their bullpen in order. If they can get the bullpen in order and actually win some close games, the Cubs could contend, not for a spot in the playoffs, obviously, but they could be one of those teams that are borderline 500. White Sox, on the other hand, they have an outside shot at contending for the Central Division. What they have to do is they have to start hitting. They have to be a little more patient at the plate. If they can be patient at the plate, things look well on the south side of Chicago. For now, it's just one game. Like I say, the Cubs defeated the Sox 7-0. With one game in the books, it's hard to really get a gauge on what's what. At the same time, basketball's still going on, and the Blackhawks are still playing. Once the Blackhawks are done, then we'll snap out of it and we'll start paying attention to baseball. Also, what's going on, you look at Chicago sports in general. The Chicago Fire, it's time for them to get their act together. Hopefully they can get a win in their next game. The Chicago Bulls are left with a bunch of different decisions. Financially, they're a mess. 8 players on the contract, $72 million plus that's owed to those 8 players. They're going to have to figure out something. I wrote a piece on a Bleacher Report that should be released later on today. It is the one trade the Bulls must make, and that is on the Bleacher Report, bleacherreport.com. Look for me. I'm Ernest Shepard, featured columnist for the Chicago Bulls. I'd like to thank you. This has pretty much been a wonderful experience for me. I'd like to thank you all for tuning in. This is Curbside with Ernest James. Follow me on Twitter at Ernest Shepard and like the Facebook page, The Ernest James Theory. Thank you. I hope you all have had fun. I've appreciated the time that I spent with you. I am out. It's been a wonderful, wonderful time. Thank you.